So I have a Quilters vibe video for you today. I'm showing you this stamp because it was $2 in the Clique kit shop. And I was thinking I was going to use it on this layout, but then I don't. But anyway, yeah, $2, you guys. And it's this super adorable, easy to use hot air balloon. This is the first layout I'm doing with any of the April Winter Park Clique kits. So this is the first time I'm even kind of opening or really looking at what's in the Traveler's Notebook kit. So I know that I want to use it on this layout, so I'm just kind of going through it quick. And yeah, that gives you an idea of what's in your Traveler's Notebook Clique kit for April if you're interested or you're a subscriber. And so I'm just kind of flicking through it, trying to decide what pieces I might want to use. These giant florals are going to come in handy later on. They're huge. They're so big and pretty. And you get a half a pack of the 6x6 paper pad. And then we get the Twilight stamps, which I'm super excited. I actually broke those out, like dug them out of the bag and used them already. And I love them. They're super pretty. These are some fun pieces we get. So we get some shipping tags and some little book pages of music books. And these are little cut-aparts. And then we get a whole entire pack of these sticker sheets. So what I am planning on doing today is I have this photo of my nephew. Nephew. So many small little boys in my life. And I'm going to go ahead and use that for my layout. And so I have decided to create a full quilting background for you guys today. And I'm going to show you the photo here. What I really loved about this was that it was an 8.5 by 11. It looked like it would easily convert to 8.5 by 11, so it didn't look like a square quilt. It was very rectangular. And so I decided that that was the one I was going to use. I'm going to create a full, complete background. I'm going to start by going through the Flourish paper pad and choosing a couple of designs that I think would be nice when you cut it apart. I'm umming a lot today. I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm taking this 6x6 paper pad and I'm going to use this as my border. And you know what? Even though, that whole design is what I'm going to make my entire background from, I will say that this idea of taking 1/2-inch strips of paper and using it to border your layout is just a really cool kind of design idea. I really like how it turns out, and I think that it's something that I'm going to use again. In fact, I totally know it is, because I think it just turned out really, really nice. And it didn't take a lot of paper or it really gave a nice look to this page, and so I really think that it's a technique that I'm going to try to do again. So what I'm going to do is, here I go, umming again. Apparently that's what we're doing today. See? I can't even stop it. Oh dear, this is so bad. I'm going to go ahead and punch some squares, and I'm doing this because I'm running out of this 6x6 paper. And full disclosure, at some point I had to go ahead and I have another one of these 6x6 pads just in my stash. And so, full disclosure, I did have to go through and grab a second 6x6 sheet of this pattern. So if I were doing this layout just with the Traveler's Notebook kit, I would grab an extra pattern paper. I would get one for the border, and then you would need 3 for the inside that kind of coordinate. And that's what I would do. I wouldn't use the same pattern paper in the border that you use for the inside of the page, unless, like me, you have an extra 6x6 pad kind of stashed away somewhere. Okay? Okay. Now we're going to start to punch squares. So for punching squares, I decided, after kind of looking at this design, that the best way to go about filling this whole page would be to punch 1-inch squares and then cut them into quarters. And there is a method to what I'm doing, and can I just say that no matter how exactly you measure these quilt patterns, no matter how perfectly you cut the papers, you're going to get squidgy parts. It's just gonna happen. Yeah, my son was stealing the gold leaves. He decided that they were adorable and he wanted them for himself, and I had to convince him that no, in fact, he did not want the gold leaves for himself. Also, while I was creating this layout, I learned a couple of tips and tricks. First of all, don't ink your edges. I started inking my edges as I was putting this together, and no, I quit, like, before I even got through, like, 3 of the patterns. So in my head, what I did was I broke this pattern into small 1-inch, well, 1-inch-ish, like, small squares. Yeah, and then I'm going to go ahead and start at one corner of the layout and work my way around. And I'm not going to make you watch all of this. But what I'm doing now is I'm just taking those 1-inch squares, I'm cutting them into 4s, and then I'm following the design on my page. I am starting in the bottom left-hand corner for a very specific reason. I have done a number of these quilt layouts in the past. I've done oodles of them. And I have found that no matter how, like I started to say before my son showed up and started to mess with my gold leaves, no matter how well you cut this, it doesn't matter, you're going to make mistakes. There's going to be squidgy parts. So my rule is I allow myself to have 3 squidgy parts, because when I do that, I end up with 3 places that I don't care if I cover up because they're messed up anyway. So that gives me nice places to put my photo and nice places to put my embellishments. So my plan is to start at one corner and to work my way around the design. That way, those squidgy parts where I miscut, where things aren't lining up, in this particular layout, I get to that upper corner and I've suddenly been like drifting and I had to like recorrect myself. So yeah, it's gonna happen. And the best way to deal with it is just to know when you get to those parts where you have to correct your design, okay, that's where we're gonna put one of those huge giant flowers. And that means that after you've worked so hard on a layout design like this, you've cut all these teeny tiny little papers, you've set up these patterns, you're not upset to be covering up certain parts of them. So it's almost like you're kind of planning almost, just know, okay, I made this first mistake, I'm going to correct, there's going to be this huge gappy part, giant flower. And then when you go to embellish, number one, it's super easy because you have those spots, those squidgy spots, and you're not upset about covering up those places. So this is what I did. This took a really, really, really long time. All of my layouts this week seem to be layouts that take a really, really, really long time. I don't know why. I was just in that frame of mind. So I'm just showing you here how I'm going to start. I'm also doing that because generally for me, I do a really good job, and then at the end, like right at the end of the design, I'm like, I mess it up somehow. So that's why I kind of do it too, because it kind of gives me lots of parts. So my plan for my photo is to go here. And then anywhere in there that I make a squidgy part, yeah, that's where we're going to put the embellishments. So I'm just going to keep going here, and then I'm going to show you where, how it turned out almost at the end. Okay, so at this point we're done. Yep, I'm showing you where the squishy part is. That's where I had to totally just like completely start over. I don't even know how that happened. And I also ended up with like a border around the edges, which I'm totally fine with. Because you know what? There are 4 rolls of washi tape in this kit, and we're going to put them to good use. Well, one of them we're going to put to good use. I also pulled out my Xyron, and I found my Xyron to be the best way to adhere these little pieces of paper down. Initially, I was I'm not kidding you. I was like gluing them, but no, I don't know what I was thinking. Because initially I did, when I first started, I was gluing them, but it was not working. And so at some point I realized that I have like 3 Xyron Mini X's in my stash, and I broke one out. And I used a lot of it on this layout, but that's okay because I don't use it very often, and in this, for a layout like this, it was a fabulous tool. Another thing I did was I did take my X-Acto knife and clean up squidgy edges if they needed to be cleaned up. Sometimes, just because human nature, I'm not going to cut these perfectly. So I went ahead and just, where I had edges where there were like corners peeking out or something, I just went ahead and cut them with my X-Acto knife. I also was mindful of where I let myself have mistakes. Again, hand cutting. So they aren't going to match up perfectly, but for the most part, I got into a good rhythm of kind of folding the squares. So I had a nice kind of crease mark to show me where to cut and then cutting them. But definitely, this was just fun for me. I will say that I think this turned out beautiful, and I think it's really important when you're doing this to give yourself a break. This is not going to be perfect. And like I said, where you have parts that are squidgy, like that whole section in the upper left-hand corner of my design, it's okay. Because this is a scrapbook page. You're supposed to add a photo, you're supposed to add embellishments. And like I said, having those squidgy parts makes adding those embellishments that much easier. It really does, because you're like, oh, well, I messed up that part anyway, so I can just cover it. And yeah, so I'm just showing you here my process for kind of finishing up this particular design. This is a more complicated page and a pretty complicated design. But after I kind of got into the swing of knowing how the design was, how it was laid out, and viewing it as a bunch of teeny tiny little squares, it really did go fast. I knew after a while, you could see here, like I put my phone away. I didn't need the picture anymore. I knew how the design worked. Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead now and I'm going to add this washi tape. I'm going to use this gorgeous rose gold washi tape because it is translucent, so the white kind of pops it out, and I thought that against that white cardstock it would be gorgeous to use. And I'm just going to take that X-Acto knife and create almost like a border. And again, by starting in the corner, that meant that when I got to the top and to the side and I had this border, the border wasn't in a strange place. It was in a nice corner of my layout that I could just embellish, add the washi, and clean it up, and it worked. It worked with the design, and it worked with what I was doing with the rest of the layout. Big flower time. Oh no, I'm going to do my photo first. So I decided I want to back my photo. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some of the papers that I used in my design, but then I'm going to pull in a floral from the paper pad because there's going to be green in this layout, right? There's nothing I can do about it. I want to use those giant flowers, and those giant flowers have green leaves. So I'm going to use this itty bitty piece of scrap because that's really, I had no more pink. I had no more of that brown marbly color. I don't think anyway. And so I decided to use this green floral mat around the photo because I wanted to make sure that since there's no green in my background, that there is green somewhere else on the page, not just in the flower leaves. So I'm going to adhere my photo, and now it's time to look at my design. Where are the disappointing parts that I'm like, really? That was messed up. And so we're going to cover them up now. Fortunately, because of my rule, that's, I can restart and have squidgy spots 3 places on my layout. I actually did end up with 3 places on my layout. I know exactly where I can embellish, and I know exactly how I can embellish. So I'm going to grab these giant die cuts, and I'm going to use them to cover up the squidgy parts. And I will say this one more time. I think it's really, 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 really important to not be a perfectionist when you make quilt-inspired layouts. Really, really, really don't be a perfectionist. Give yourself permission to leave a giant gap and start over. I decided that I wanted to use these fun label stickers and these gold alphabet in the sticker sheet as a way to add a little caption to this photo. And can I just say that if someone could please give me an entire book of these mirrored gold letters in the this Maggie Holmes sticker pack, I would buy 10 packs of them. Those mirrored alphabet stickers are just, they're gorgeous. I could use them on every layout I ever make into eternity and never get sick of them. But I only have one sheet, so they're going to go fast. Now I'm just going ahead and placing down all of my fun little embellishments in my clusters. I'm using some glue Zotz Bling to adhere down those gold leaves, and I think I used them all because that's another element that you could give me, you know, hundreds of them, and I would use them on everything I make. They're beautiful. And I ended up pulling in one of those shipping tags. I thought it was just a nice little base, a little something different right there, and it covered the entire squishy part that I had to start over with. So, you know. I did add a little bit of ink to that shipping tag just to give it some dimension away from the backgrounds. And now I'm just sticking and plunking and plunking and sticking. And you can see how much of this background actually ends up being covered up. And I am okay with that. If that would be something that would bug you, then just know yourself that you want a smaller cluster and a smaller amount of embellishments over the areas that you had to start over. But for me, I just like that background. I like how the geometrics kind of pop out. It gives it some interest, and I think that there's plenty of it on display in this layout without it being too busy. And so I was really, really happy with how this turned out, and I think it's gorgeous. Please be sure to take a peek in the Clique Kids shop. I believe these kits might be in the shop. I'm not 100% sure, or they might be sold out, but that's okay. Have a wonderful day. You might also have some of this flourish stash in your kit, in your stash too, and this is all Maggie Holmes Flourish. So have a wonderful day, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.